Hey, this is Ryan Cantor, and we are talking about Clemson recruiting, and we have a special guest to help us do that. Today, we are welcoming Quacking Tiger. You know him from Shaking the Southland. You've seen him on Twitter bringing great analysis and recruiting nuggets. Quacking Tiger, thanks for joining us.
No, thank you for having me, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's jump right in. We'll talk about a bunch of topics. We'll probably break this into a couple different videos. So if you're not subscribed to this channel, please do so to make sure you don't miss any of those. Also, if you could like this video, that would help. But QT, let's start with the offensive line. So kind of a disappointing week, and we timed this interview to wait for Fletcher Westphal to commit, and of course he committed to Florida. William Satterwhite was in between Clemson and Tennessee, and he went to Tennessee. Fortunately, Clemson did land a high 3-star, really borderline with 4-star, but still a 3-star in the 24/7 composite. Ronan O'Connell out of Franklin, Tennessee, which is suburban Nashville, beat out Tennessee for his services. So that's one good ad. But your thoughts on the offensive line pipeline? Let's start with Ronan O'Connell specifically. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, I mean, I was enthusiastic when they landed Ronan O'Connell that perhaps this would, start the train moving, and that they could land these other recruits that they felt really strongly about heading out of their official visits. And I think at the time, the feeling on the Clemson's campus was more like, how many of these guys are we going to get? Maybe we won't have room for everyone versus only having one recruit committed at this period of time. Ronan for sure is a road grader, and you have this great chart up here. I think he fits into the Will Putnam, Walker Parks kind of mold of a road grader, someone who maybe has a little more skill or a little less skill than some of the other players, a little less of the measurables, but has that road grader mentality, wants to really just smash people. And so I think he fits really well with the mentality of Ian Reed, Harris Sewell, and a little bit of a bulldog mentality versus like someone that just is a project that has a bunch of measurables. I think Ronan O'Connell is somebody who you can bring in who's probably going to be a multi-year starter for you just because of his attitude and the intangibles that he's bringing. And so, you always like to load up your room with those kinds of players. But there's a difference between, I think, Ronan O'Connell level recruit and some of the people that like UGA is bringing in that are just like 6'6", 350, 380 pound beasts every single year, adding 4 or 5 of those guys every single year versus, this type of recruit. But that doesn't mean that you can't win a lot of games with a player like Ronan O'Connell. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm down on his evaluation or on his commitment. But certainly there's room that you can grow for the offensive line class this year.
Yeah, and O'Connell, kind of to your point, not a freak, but not slight of frame either. 6'4.5", 290, right. Plays left tackle for Fred J. Page in Franklin, Tennessee. Projects more on the interior line for us, I believe. I did watch his highlights from his junior year, and really heavy on him pulling or getting out in space and just obliterating a linebacker. So I thought, and I'll let you comment on this. Maybe it's a novice watching film, but I thought he looked very fleet-footed and good in space. So I thought that was encouraging.
He definitely likes to pancake as many times as possible. In fact, I haven't watched film where there's as many pancakes on the film as in a while. So I think he definitely can pull. But you're right. He kind of slots in as an interior lineman. And if you're going to like evaluate him as a potential tackle, I think that would be harder for him just in terms of foot speed and things like that. But yeah, he definitely can pull. And I think he's a good system fit for kind of what Clemson is wanting to do with their new offensive coordinator as well.
Gotcha. So Clemson will be looking for, I would think, at least 2 more offensive linemen. Is that your presumption?
Definitely. I think that going into this recruiting season, it was 3 to 4 players. Now it's looking more like 3. But yeah, I really think that if you only brought in 2 this class, Clemson would be kind of shooting themselves in the foot and creating depth problems down the road. There definitely needs to be 3 linemen in this class, if not 4.
Yeah, and what's so weird is with that COVID year, I mean, Putnam is definitely gone after this year. Parks maybe is gone. Mitchell Mays maybe is gone. I also wonder, is Mitchell Mays a guy who's going to start for us? He's a senior. Maybe Putnam leaves and Mays can become the center, but you also wonder, is that really Ryan Linthicum who's waiting for that center position? Just your thoughts on kind of like the pipeline overall, who's next, and sort of where it's moving after this upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of question marks. You look at that 2020 class there, and you don't see the level of production that we're hoping for with that big of a class, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players there in the 2020 class. That Parks obviously has contributed a bunch, but other than him, you haven't had the level of contribution. I think you look at Marcus Tate, and he's really the question mark. Does Tate become a tackle, which is probably where he's more ideally suited? Coming off of injury, looks like he's moving better. Does he go back inside? How does he respond with the new coach and the new system? Does that help him with simplifying things a little bit more? Because if Marcus Tate, who has a lot of talent, can lock down either the right tackle, or the left tackle or the left guard spot, then that really gives you a lot of flexibility to plug in some of these other players. And I think that some of the younger guys are going to get a lot more playing time, like Blake Miller, Colin Sadler. I think you'll see Ian Reed and Harris Sewell on the 2 deep sooner than later. And then you got Tristan who needs to make a move. You got Pennington, who seemed poised in his first offseason. I mean, I was really high on Pennington. Then he got injured. Then he was out of shape and wasn't able to contribute last year. He has the physical makeup to be able to be a starter, but he's got to make that move now in his redshirt sophomore year. So, you can't, I don't think you can bank on Parks and Mays sticking around, but, Parks definitely, you would hope, if he could have a COVID year, but I think he's probably going to the NFL if he has the kind of year that we hope he could have this year. And then Mays, he's got to get on the field, right? He's got to stay healthy, number one, and he's got to show that he can either play that right tackle spot where he's going to have competition from Blake Miller to begin with, or slot inside somewhere. I think that's a good idea to put him potentially at center. But yeah, there's other guys who I think would be more physical and better suited.
Yeah, Mitchell Mays had 404 snaps, and on PFF grades, he was a 57.8, which, it's not horrible, but it's not good either. Kind of wanted to ask you just a few last questions on offensive line, then we can move to some skill players on offense. But I've been saying a lot through this offseason that it would really be ideal if Tristan Lee could earn that left tackle job. And the reason I say that, Clemson and the staff, they always talk about getting the best 5 on the field. And I feel that really that doesn't matter. You need the best unit on the field. And what happens is they have one spot to fill, and instead of putting, just inserting a guy and leaving the rest the same, it becomes this big shuffle. You don't start Tristan Lee, so then you shift over Tate. So then you have someone new to left tackle and someone new to left guard, or they shift over someone else to fill that. And it's this domino effect that I think is detrimental. So I've been saying if Tristan Lee can start at left tackle, and everything else is the exact same as last year, that's the best case scenario. Flip side of that is Walker Parks was much better tackle. And like you said, Marcus Tate, maybe he's more suited for tackle. So just your thoughts on what's the most optimal situation for the offensive line this year.
Yeah, I think that this is the Tetris that Austin is going to be tasked with to make sure that the offensive line is working in a way that we need it to be to elevate the system. So Will Putnam at center, right? We know what we get with Will Putnam. Decent, not the level that we were hoping that we would get, but he's consistent. He's decent there. And then, I mean, who are we putting at left guard and right guard? Are we putting Tate, and who's at right guard for you right now? Yeah, it's like, I mean, Walker Parks, right, is kind of who we're thinking about, right?
I mean, you're not going to bench Walker Parks. He's one of your
No.
best overall linemen, but he was just so much better at right tackle. But yeah, I mean, Walker Parks is your right guard.
I think he was a little injured last year, so I'm optimistic that he can raise his level of play. But I agree with you that he played better as a tackle than he did as a guard. But let's slot him then in the right guard spot, and then let's put Blake Miller at right tackle, who had some really great moments, and then a few freshman moments
Right.
last year. And then we can either put Lee at left tackle, or we can try to get someone else there. I mean, do we move Blake Miller over if he's really doing that great? Do we move Tate over and then put Colin Sadler in at right guard? I think that there are a lot of question marks that are going to have to be solved in August camp, because you need. I agree with you that this group needs to have 5 players that can gel together and provide that coherent, consistent play. I don't see, in terms of looking at the freshmen right now, I don't see Zach Owens contributing. I think he's a project, but he's got that big build, and I'm excited about his upside, but it's probably not going to be this year. I do think that Ian Reed and Harris Sewell will slot into that 2 deep and probably on the interior to begin with. And so that's something that I would look for. And my guy Pennington, it's like, it's now or never, man. You got to make your move and give us that depth on the interior. So, I mean, I think you're right that right now we have Putnam, then we have Parks and Tate, and you put in somebody at left tackle. But, it's like you want your most talented player at left tackle, right? I mean, that's what's I think difficult about the current makeup.
Well, the most talented player you would think is either Walker Parks or Tristan Lee. So that if it was up to me, if Tristan Lee can't do it and just keep the rest the same, then maybe Walker Parks can move over because he was great at right tackle. He wasn't healthy or struggled for whatever reason at right guard. If this is his walk year, I feel like maybe you give him the chance at left tackle if Tristan Lee's not going to hold it down.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think that the move happened last year a little bit because his measurables at the NFL level are more suited for a guard, right? But I mean, we had a 6'2" left tackle last year who did a really good job for us, so I don't see why we couldn't put Parks out on at left tackle. Blake Miller too, I think has a say in how the line shapes out. If he could slot in the left tackle, then you put him there, and then you kind of roll the dice with whoever is at right tackle and not worry as much about it.
Gotcha. So let's end with this. I just wanted to get your thoughts. It's incomplete so far, but Thomas Austin on the recruiting trail, Thomas Austin as a coach, any early thoughts on his time at Clemson?
He just struck out with Weenie, who goes to Georgia. He struck out with Satterwhite, who goes to Tennessee. He strikes out with Poe, who goes to Alabama, and he strikes out with Westfall, who goes to Florida. And I mean, that's a tough set of strikeouts, particularly when you have a recruiting philosophy where you don't offer a lot of players and you narrowly focus in on that group. If you can't land, 2 of those guys, then that's not ideal, right? So this recruiting class is really interesting because it's been really great on a lot of fronts, right? And I'm sure we'll talk about wide receiver in a minute, but also you've got 1 offensive line recruit committed. You've got no quarterbacks for this class. It's definitely right now a mixed bag. Offensive line is one of the hardest positions to project. And so, it's not the end of the world if you get guys that are a little bit under recruited who, have potential. I think the offensive line, the star rankings are maybe not as important as others, but it's hard to argue that, I mean, I think Poe is going to be a great player. Like that, he was going to be a great player. He was at the top of my list. Satterwhite was right underneath that. Weenie next, and then Westfall. And so to strike out on all those top players and not have players ready to go, You know, I think it's hard to give Thomas a passing grade right now. Let's see what he can do for these last two slots and who he's able to land here. But this was a key class. This was an important class for the offensive line to stack talent. I feel like he did pretty well last year. So, you know, I'm willing to kind of still give him some more time to grow into the job as a recruiter, but the time is you know, it's coming where he needs to really land some big offensive line talent, you know?
Yeah. So, when I put this table together, the thing that I thought was interesting is, you know, I kind of felt like offensive line recruiting, the quantity is important, but they're so hit or miss. The ratings maybe don't matter as much, but I thought what was really revealing here was if you look at the 2020 class, the two highest rated guys, Walker Parks and Mitchell Mays, they're bolded because they're going to get the most playing time this year. You look at the 2021 class, same thing. So they're not all wrong. That's why we care about recruiting. Let's put a pin on this conversation here, and we'll pick it back up in a few minutes. We'll have a separate video. We'll jump into the offense. Thanks for joining, QT.
Thank you.